Okay, so we've been mostly talking about domestic affairs, but what about foreign affairs, particularly when it comes to North Korea, which is, I think, an issue that many of our international listeners will be interested to hear about. Now, Yoon's presidency comes on the back of Moon's presidency, of course, where there were breakthrough in engagements, but ultimately tensions have returned along with missile testing. Yoon on the campaign trail spoke loudly about the need to boost defensive readiness and work closer with the US. Dr. Bong, this is your field, so let me go back to you. Do you think relations with North Korea will become tense again, even further?
Oh, yes, definitely, until the end of the year 2022. But it's not the fault of the new president of South Korea, being Mr. Yoon Suk-yeol. If I were the new president of South Korea, then North Korea would have continued the provocations, the
If
escalated
you
tension.
were yourself.
Anybody, if you or Shim Sang-jung, you name anybody. I mean, let's just keep same president for another 5 years, right? Moon Jae-in. It's a North Korea's playbook, which was announced already in the Eighth Party Congress in January 2021 in the name of strengthening national military capability to develop all sorts of the weapon systems, hypersonic missiles, cruise missiles, SLBMs, nuclear propelled submarines, Byung Pulse, you name it. So, regardless of who the next president of South Korea would be, North Korea was already predetermined to raise the tension on the Korean Peninsula and, in parallel, continue to develop its own military capability and use that as a bargaining leverage upon the Biden administration and the new South Korean government starting next year, 2023. I think it is Kim Jong-un's intention to repeat the same cycle of 2017 and 2018. You hike up the tension to the extreme. North Korea is likely to conduct another nuclear test, but prior to doing that, North Korea is likely to conduct ICBM test, probably in celebration of Day of Sun in April. Then, using that dangerous security situation on the Korean Peninsula as a bargaining leverage on U.S., Japan, and South Korea, then suddenly, introduce the olive branch and the peace talk, probably in the form of New Year's message by Kim Jong-un on the first day of 2023, just like he did on the first day of 2018.
Sure, but back then, Moon was very willing to accept that olive branch. Will President Yoon be as
Right.
accepting?
2017, Moon Jae-in government, newly installed, try everything to appease North Korea. And you know what happened? North Korea did not care. Did not care. So whatever is happening in South Korea, whoever the South Korean president is, do not really matter in terms of making impact on North Korea's strategic determination and plan.
Mr. Friedhoff, would you agree with that? And also, the fact is that the Biden administration at the moment doesn't particularly want to engage with North Korea unless North Korea is willing to give up something. And that falls more better in line with perhaps the Yoon administration now. Do you think that could at least help the situation between South Korea and the US form a better team together?
Yeah, under the Yoon administration, I do expect some of the alliance management to smooth out, and so and part of that's going to be down to the team that he's brought in. Right, a lot of his team is very well known in Washington, whether it's Kim Sung-han, who's probably going to be the next national security advisor, rumors about who might be the next foreign minister, such as someone like Park Jin, and then there's also the players like Cho Tae-yong that are also going to be involved in the administration. So all of those people have good reputations in Washington. They all have been big vocal advocates of the alliance. And so, yeah, I expect a lot of the alliance management to smooth out. But when it comes to North Korea, I think Dr. Bong is exactly right. North Korea is not necessarily doing these things to get, to attract attention, or that's the things that always comes up. And they're not doing it to try to. They didn't do it to try to influence the vote in South Korea, right? They launched the most missiles in a month in January. They had a few more launches just ahead of the election, and that's because they're on a timetable, right? They have capabilities that they want to test, that they want to prove, And that's what countries do when they have weapon systems they want to prove. They have to test them. So it's not there's not really anything I think any country or any specific leader can do to knock them off of that timetable. Will the olive branches come? Yes. Will the Biden administration be ready to talk? Yeah, I think that they have their hands full at the moment with bigger issues, and I don't think they want to spend a lot of political capital on an issue that they see as a dead end. And the last thing I would mention is that even though the South Korean presidents always want to engage North Korea, even those who took a hard line, they often sought summits with North Korea, whether they were successful or not. They were trying to work towards that. And they're going to continue to push for denuclearization, either in the short term or as part of a process. But the Korean public is not there. In most polling, we see 85, 90% say that North Korea is never going to give up its weapons. So there's very little confidence that even if there are these summits, that it's actually going to lead to denuclearization either now or in the longer term.
Professor Kim, meanwhile, President-elect Yoon has suggested bringing more THAAD batteries to Korea, the U.S. military defense system. Do you think he will, despite what he said during the campaign? Because the reaction from China would be very strong, to say the least.
About the THAAD question, I guess many will agree that he's not selling the missiles to the Korean public or anything like that. He's not representing the company that produces the missiles here. So I don't think he'll be really committed to the particular weapon system THAAD as a whole. The whole idea he was promoting is that Korea has to do all it can to maximize its defense capability. And I want to share with you my real true story that I experienced with the students that I teach, the male students in their 20s. Just like Professor Cho mentioned about young female voters in their 20s getting angry and fearful about the gender issues, male students that I teach in their 20s, they came up to me and they said, Professor, I watched the debate and Lee Jae-myung and Kim Sang-jung are talking about Yoon Suk-yeol as not fit for president because he doesn't talk about peace. But isn't it the case that the president who will protect us will be the one who will show all his willingness to fight to death and do everything he can to maximize our defense capability? Isn't that the president who will actually guarantee us the peace on this peninsula? If president talks about peace all the time with the counterparts like China and North Korea, how can we be sure that we will actually live in peace? They were really angry. They were very angry after the debate about the fact that Lee Jae-myung and Kim Sang-jung were only talking about peace. So I think I was, I didn't know how to respond to them because it's their own individual observation and stuff like that. I didn't encourage them to continue to feel their way, whatever. But I'm just sharing this story about it. And there's a significant population in Korea who believe that Korea has to do all it can in order to maximize our security and preserve peace. And in that case, as I mentioned, the president has to show his willingness or her willingness to go all the way, do whatever it takes to maximize the national security. I think that's what Yoon is trying to do.
Professor Cho, I just want to give you a minute because I remember after one of the debates, I spoke to you on the show, and I remember you commenting the fact that you didn't think any of the presidential candidates would stay to fight if a war broke out, apart from maybe Kim Sang-jung, differing from what some of Professor Kim's students are saying. But do you have any concerns with President-elect Yoon's stances on North Korea and the situation with North Korea?
So this is actually in alignment to what I was talking about earlier with regard to reverting to type. It's really what your core belief is, what your system of philosophy is. If you're an institutionalist and if you believe in peace building, you're going to be talking about peace, trying to achieve peace together through cooperation. But if you are a hardcore realist or a neo-realist who believes that you can only achieve security through strength, then you are obviously going to be talking about strengthening your offensive capabilities and getting more arms, etc. But I do wonder whether it isn't time for us here in South Korea to change our approach to North Korea and this issue of unification, because really I think now less than majority of the population actually support the idea of unification, and it's much less realistic uh, to expect that North Korea is going to give up their nuclear capability, especially after what we see is happening to Ukraine. Ukraine, who remains the only nation on earth to have given up nuclear arms voluntarily.
Sure.
And
I think
so
that's
I do.
I think that's a much bigger discussion than we
Yes.
can fit in today. So, Dr. Bong, let me ask you on this issue of Japan as well, because under the Moon administration, tensions between Japan and South Korea have heightened to levels we haven't seen in a very, very long time. Do you think now with President-elect Yoon coming in, that can improve?
Yes, definitely. The opportunity is out there, and the Kishida government made it really clear that the Japanese government is ready to discuss how to improve the bilateral tie with South Korea. But at the same time, the anti-Japan sentiment is a very critical component in domestic politics for any parties or any president. So President Moon Jae-in has to tread very carefully, because there are two elections this year, the local election and the National Assembly election next year. So being labeled as a pro-Japanese or too soft on Japan will be kiss of death to the leadership. So he has to be really careful in improving the bilateral tie with Japan, and South Korea making more and bigger commitment to the trilateral security cooperation with the United States and Japan. So I'm all for improving tie with Japan, but I would like to caution that there must be right method to achieving that goal.